Hello, my name is Crystal Woodley. I'm currently a student at Grand Central University, and today I will be doing a video presentation on teaching dispositions. This was an assignment given to us this week in which we have to answer 3 questions. So I'd like to begin by reading the first question, which is, what is the special education teacher's role in supporting learning, improving planning and practice, upholding professional expectations and ethics, and collaboratively advancing the profession? As you can see, that's a very elaborate question, which is deserving of a very elaborate answer. Oftentimes, I like to think of special education teachers sort of like store managers, in the sense that an owner of a store would never hire a manager who is untrustworthy or lacking in credentials or skill. They need to know that in their absence that their store is going to run smoothly and they're going to gain a profit. Similarly, special education teachers are certainly qualified individuals with credentials, a lot of education, and as such, they have a heavy responsibility. They not only have to manage their classroom, and that entails the decoration of it, moving furniture to set up just the right groupings of students and centers, bulletin boards, the art and decor of the classroom, just creating that perfect classroom environment. They also have to collaborate with staff members, including maybe classroom paraprofessionals or related service providers. And the whole idea behind that is to discuss specialized plans for each student. A teacher has to keep track of IEPs and documents, toileting charts, ABA data, medical documentation, progress reports. I mean, the list is very long. And most important, a special education teacher's biggest role is to be a good leader and to maintain good relationships with other educators, because iron sharpens iron. So whatever one teacher doesn't know, the other one can help. You can share best practices, you can share lesson plan ideas, etc. So I hope that fully covers that question. I'd like to move on to the second question, which is, what dispositions that you currently possess will help you to become a successful teacher? What dispositions do you think you need to work on before you enter the classroom as a first-year teacher? So I'll start with the first part of that question, and the professor was good enough to give us a survey to help us to analyze the different dispositions and to do sort of a self-assessment. And out of 10 dispositions, honestly speaking, I strongly agreed with 8 of them. 2 just agreed with. Not to sound braggadocious or anything, but I have been a teaching educator for 13 years. So I have been working on making myself a better professional. So a lot of these came easy for me at this point, but there are 2 that I want to work on. But for the sake of time, I'll just focus on 2 dispositions that were near and dear to me. I'll start with the first one being actually the last one. Educators should be committed to the profession of teaching and learning. I think it all starts right there. I'm full of analogies. So analogy I can think of is when someone's fully committed to going to the gym. There's a lot that's involved with that. There's going to be days it's raining, you don't feel like going, you want to give up, you make excuses. Same thing with teaching. There's times that you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like going, or you feel like calling out, or you just lose your zeal to work with the students. Sometimes you feel burnt out. But it's that commitment, that drive that keeps you going despite all of those things that may arise in one's life. That's getting up in the morning if you need to get that coffee to get that spark. And there's times that I've gone to work and I was having a bad day or a bad night, but as soon as I see my students' faces, it's like everything is forgotten. I'm able to leave my problems at the door and fully work with my students. And I think that comes from just being committed, knowing your why as to why you signed up for this profession. Another near and dear disposition to me would be educators should believe that all students can learn and should set and support realistic expectations for student success. I mean, that speaks for itself. It's never okay to think that a student is not going to learn something. If that student is not grasping the information that you're trying to convey, blame yourself. Something that you're not doing. There's your delivery, you're not using enough manipulatives. There's something that you can reflect upon as to why that student is not understanding the material. And I think that's actually the best part of this job, is that it's constantly a challenge. It would be so boring if all your students you taught the material, it was whole hum, and they picked up the information the first time. What's the fun in that? It's the challenge of, oh my goodness, Johnny's not getting this. I've tried manipulatives, I've tried charts. Oh, let me try maybe videos, maybe something tactile, changing his group settings. That's the fun in the job, trying to find that one thing that's going to make that student grasp that information. So the second part of that question was, what dispositions do I need to work on? If I'm honest with myself, I had highlighted two that I felt I could work on. One was the one that said educators should recognize that reflection combined with experience leads to growth as a professional. Where do I start with that one? I tend to be a perfectionist, and coupled with that, I'm not good at asking for help all the time. I rather just spend the time trying to figure it out myself. I feel that if I'm able to reflect and get feedback from my coworkers and ask for that help, it would lead to more positive experiences, and thus the growth would come. Another thing is, because of the perfectionist attitude that I have, I tend to put a lot on my plate, and I also tend to want to speed things up, and I have to sometimes realize that, nope, pump your brakes. It takes time. You just have to take one step at a time, and these small steps will eventually lead to big steps. A second disposition I feel I need to work on would be promoting and supporting curiosity and encouraging active inquiry with my students. Big time guilty here. I even do it with my daughter. She'll come and ask me, hey mommy, why is the sky blue? And right away I want to go and give her the whole story about the water cycle, or if I don't know the answer in particular, look it up on Google with her. I just want to spoon feed her the information right away. And I'm learning it's better to ask them, well, what do you think? Why do you think the sky is blue? It's very telling to see where their mind goes, and then you can build upon those things. So I definitely want to work on, in the upcoming school year, how to draw out that curiosity without just giving them the answer. So I hope I fully answered that question. So now I'm going to move on to my final question, and that is, what effect could personal biases have on expectations that teachers have for their students? How could these biases affect their relationship with students and their families? This is a very interesting question, especially due to the fact that I live in New York City, and our chancellor just had us do a mandated had us do a training on implicit bias. I learned so much about it, but to keep it short and sweet, once again with analogies, they gave the analogy of an iceberg and how here's the water. An iceberg just pushes past the surface of the water, but below the surface of the water, the iceberg is much deeper. And that describes people in general with implicit biases. They, on the outside, don't seem to have any biases. They seem to love everyone. Everybody is, cool with one another. But if you're human, you have a heartbeat and a pulse, you have a bias, or you have a prejudice, or you have some type of judgment. It's only human. The problem I think we have with biases is that despite us all having them, is when it comes to stereotypes and pigeonholing people and compartmentalizing them. And unfortunately, we do this with our students. This could be in the form of race. You can see an Asian student say, oh, they're going to be really smart, or you can start to judge by names, all kinds of ways that we can be judgmental or biased. It's okay to have an observation. I mean, to be honest, I've had students in my class that were of Indian descent, and I have Indian bloodline, so I feel I could speak on this. And it was my observation that the Indian boys tend to be kind of on the bratty side, and kind of spoiled by their mothers. They could do no wrong. Now that's my observation, that's my bias. Where I would go wrong with that as a professional is assuming that all male Indian boys are bratty and spoiled by their mothers, and when you tell their mothers things that they have done that was on the disruptive side or less than positive side, their mothers will not discipline them. That's not being open-minded. That's not being, mindful of the fact that that may not always be the case. So it's okay, in my opinion, to have your observations or to find patterns or common threads. But where you go wrong is when you overgeneralize. Then it becomes a bias, and then it stunts you professionally, and that's never a good thing. So it would be behoove all of us to just be open-minded, and expect the unexpected. That's the beauty of special education. It's just so flexible. It's so unpredictable. There's so many challenges that one can overcome with the students, staff. It's an amazing world, the world of special education. So those were all the questions. I hope I answered them effectively, and thanks for listening. Bye.